When you go silent, something shifts in the atmosphere. He may not admit it right away, but the moment you stop responding, the moment you stop giving him your energy, he feels it. Silence creates uncertainty, and uncertainty is one of the most unsettling emotions a person can experience. Suddenly, the predictable attention he once had is no longer there, and that absence makes him start questioning things he never thought about before. At first, he might act as if he doesn't care. He might even double down on his pride, telling himself that your silence doesn't affect him. But deep inside, there's a nagging thought creeping in. Why isn't she reaching out? Has she moved on? That uncertainty starts to weigh on him. You see, when you were always available, when you always picked up the phone, always answered his texts, he never had to wonder. He never had to question whether he still mattered to you. But now he's left with nothing but silence, and silence forces him to think. That's the thing about human nature. When something is always there, we tend to overlook it, but the moment it's gone, we start to realize its value. He starts replaying old conversations, rereading messages, scrolling through pictures. His mind becomes a battlefield of what went wrong. Did I make a mistake? Is she really done with me? And the more these questions pile up, the more restless he becomes. Silence has a way of turning the tables without you lifting a finger. You're no longer the one chasing, no longer the one proving your worth. Instead, he's the one sitting in silence, feeling the weight of your absence. And that absence is powerful. It speaks louder than words, louder than any argument or explanation. Because now, he's left with nothing but his own thoughts, and those thoughts start to haunt him. You have to understand, when you remove your presence, you remove the comfort he once had. And when comfort is removed, panic sets in. It's no longer about you reaching out, it's about him wondering why you're not. And the more time passes, the more he feels it. The silence doesn't fade, it grows, it amplifies. It starts pressing against him in ways he never expected. This is where you have to stay strong, because the moment you break the silence, the moment you give in, you give him reassurance. And reassurance kills the uncertainty that was making him feel your absence in the first place. But when you remain silent, when you stay unbothered, the effect only intensifies. His mind races, his ego takes a hit, and suddenly, he's the one trying to figure things out. Silence is not about playing games. It's about shifting the energy. It's about reclaiming your power. The more you hold your ground, the more he realizes that he was never as in control as he thought. And that realization, that's what makes him start to chase. When you withdraw your attention, you are forcing him to sit with his own emotions. See, people who take you for granted often do so because they assume your presence is guaranteed. They assume that no matter how they act, you will always be there, ready to engage, ready to respond, ready to fight for them. But the moment you pull back, the moment you choose silence over reaction, something shifts in their world. At first, he might not notice. He might tell himself that you're just in a mood, that you'll be back to texting, calling, checking in like always. But as the hours turn into days, as your energy remains distant, he starts to feel something he hasn't felt before. Discomfort. That absence, that quiet space where your presence used to be, starts to feel unsettling. He may not want to admit it, but the longer your silence lingers, the louder it becomes in his mind. You see, when you constantly respond, when you always react, you make it easy for him to avoid his own emotions. He doesn't have to reflect. He doesn't have to think deeply about his actions because your presence fills that space for him. But when you stop engaging, when you refuse to participate in the same old cycles, he is left alone with his own thoughts. And that is a place many people don't want to be. Now something interesting starts to happen. He begins to feel the weight of his own decisions. He starts to question if he made the right choice, if he was too dismissive, too cold, too careless with your emotions. And because you are no longer there to reassure him, to soothe him, or to fight for his attention, he has to sit with those emotions by himself. He has to wrestle with the reality that the person who once cared so deeply is no longer chasing him. That silence becomes his mirror, reflecting back everything he tried to ignore. Every mistake, every unkind word, every moment he assumed he could get away with giving you less than you deserved. And the longer you remain silent, the clearer that reflection becomes. He starts wondering if he underestimated you, if he miscalculated just how much you were willing to tolerate. Now, his pride might try to hold him back. He might try to convince himself that he doesn't care. But deep down, something has shifted. That silence, that void you left behind, it starts to eat at him. And the more he tries to distract himself, the more it lingers. Because the truth is, we don't miss what we always have access to, we miss what's no longer available. And when you remove yourself, when you refuse to beg for his attention, he starts to feel that loss in ways he never expected. Silence isn't weakness, it's power. It's the ultimate teacher. And when you use it wisely, you don't have to chase. You don't have to convince. He will feel it. And eventually, that silence will bring him back, not because you asked him to, but because he couldn't escape the weight of what he lost. When you pull back and stop feeding him your energy, you disrupt the dynamic he's been relying on. See, a lot of people don't even realize how much they depend on your attention until it's gone. It's easy to take someone for granted when they're always available, always responding, always giving. But when you go silent, when you remove yourself from the equation, he starts to feel that shift in a way that words could never explain. At first, he might act like it doesn't bother him. He might even try to convince himself that your silence is meaningless, that he doesn't care. But the truth is, human nature doesn't work that way. When someone who was once present suddenly disappears, we feel it. It creates a void, an absence that lingers in the back of the mind, gnawing at our thoughts, making us wonder why. And the more you ignore him, the more that question grows. It starts as a simple curiosity, is she really done? But then as time goes on, it becomes something deeper. Doubt creeps in. He starts asking himself if he made a mistake, if he underestimated your strength, if he miscalculated how much you were willing to tolerate. And the moment doubt enters the picture, the power shifts. Because now, instead of you wondering about him, he's the one thinking about you. Instead of you questioning your worth, he's the one trying to figure out why you're no longer giving him the validation he once took for granted. That's the power of silence. It forces reflection. It makes him confront his own choices, his own behavior, and most importantly, the reality of life without you in it. And here's what's even more powerful. When you stay silent, you're no longer predictable. Before, he could expect you to react. He could expect you to reach out, to fight for him, to try to make things right. But now he doesn't know what to expect. And that uncertainty, it's unsettling. It makes him uneasy. And when a person is uneasy, they start searching for reassurance. They start looking for a way to get back that sense of control. That's when he starts to reach out. Maybe it's subtle at first, a random message, a reaction to something you pose, an excuse to start a conversation. But make no mistake, every action he takes is driven by one thing, the growing realization that you're no longer chasing him. And that realization is breaking him down in ways he never saw coming. Silence makes people question everything. It makes them feel the absence of what they once had. And when you stop giving your energy to someone who expected you to always be there, you force them to sit with a truth they can't escape. They need you more than they ever realized. There's something powerful about the moment he realizes you're no longer reacting. See, he was expecting you to reach out, to check in, to prove that you still care. Because that's what you always did, right? You cared. You were the one who held the connection together, who reached across the silence, who made sure things never completely fell apart. But now you've removed yourself from the equation, and that silence, it's louder than any words you could ever say. At first, he might brush it off. He might tell himself that you'll come back, that you just need time, that eventually you won't be able to resist the urge to check on him. But as the days go by, something shifts. That confidence starts to crack. The assurance that you would always be there begins to fade. And for the first time, he's left with a feeling he never expected. Uncertainty. Uncertainty is what breaks people. When someone is used to a pattern, when they believe they have you figured out, the moment that pattern is disrupted, they feel lost. And that loss, it doesn't just sit in the background. It takes over. It starts as a whisper in the back of his mind, something easy to ignore. But then it grows. It gets louder. It starts showing up in moments when he's alone, in conversations where your name should have been mentioned, in the empty spaces where your presence used to be. That's when the regret starts creeping in. Not necessarily regret for what he did, but regret for assuming you'd always be there. Because now he has to face a truth he never wanted to acknowledge. You were not an option. You were not someone who would wait around forever. And now that you're gone, now that your energy is no longer his to depend on, he feels that loss in a way he never expected. He feels that loss in a way he never expected. So he starts testing the waters. He starts reaching out in small ways. Maybe he watches your stories. Maybe he accidentally likes an old photo. Maybe he sends a simple message just enough to see if you'll react. But when you don't, when you continue holding your silence, that's when the panic sets in. That's when he realizes this isn't just a temporary shift. This is real. And here's the thing. Your silence is the answer to every question he never thought to ask. It tells him everything he needs to know without you having to say a single word. Because when someone can walk away without looking back, when they can sit in silence without feeling the need to explain, it sends the strongest message of all. You no longer need them. And that realization, that's what breaks him the most. There's a moment when reality starts to hit him, and it's not when you first go silent. No, at first he convinces himself that this is temporary. He tells himself, you're just playing a game, that you're trying to prove a point. He assumes that any day now you'll reach out. You'll check in, you'll break the silence because that's what you always did. You always cared too much. You always gave in. But when that doesn't happen, when the days turn into weeks and you remain unshaken, something shifts inside him. At first, it's a quiet discomfort, a nagging feeling that he can't quite put into words. It lingers in the background, creeping in when he's alone, making him second-guess himself in moments he never expected. He starts replaying past conversations, analyzing the last thing he said to you, wondering if he miscalculated how much control he had over the situation. And then, suddenly, it hits. This time is different. And that's when he starts searching for validation. He starts looking for signs that you still care, that you're still affected, that you're just as unsettled as he is. Maybe he checks your social media more than he'd like to admit. Maybe he casually asks mutual friends if they've heard from you. Maybe he even considers reaching out himself just to see how you'll react. But here's where the real power lies. You give him nothing, no response, no reaction, no proof that you're still emotionally invested. And that's what drives him crazy. Because now he's faced with the one thing he never expected, his own irrelevance. See, the one who walks away first always has the upper hand. The one who chooses silence over confrontation, who chooses peace over proving a point, is the one who ultimately wins. Because you're showing him, without even saying a word, that you are no longer tied to his validation. And let me tell you something, that is the moment everything changes, because now he's the one feeling uncertain. Now he's the one questioning what's happening. Now he's the one stuck wondering if he made a mistake. And the irony, the more he searches for proof that you still care, the more he realizes that maybe, just maybe, he lost something he took for granted. So let him wonder, let him overthink, let him sit with the silence he once assumed wouldn't affect him, because the truth is, your silence isn't just absence, it's power. It's the loudest statement you'll ever make. At first, he thought the silence meant nothing. He brushed it off, convinced himself that you'd come around. He was sure that sooner or later you'd break down, that you'd send that message, that you'd give him some kind of signal to let him know you were still thinking about him. But as the days stretched on and your silence remained, something inside him started to shift. At first, it was just an irritation. How dare you ignore him? How dare you roll in your head excuses? How dare you? How dare you? How dare you how dare you not acknowledge his presence, his existence? But then, that irritation started turning into something else, something deeper. It started turning into doubt. Because the longer you stayed silent, the more he realized that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't as important as he thought he was. See, silence isn't just about absence. It's about power. It's about control. And when you take your energy back, when you refuse to feed his ego, he starts to feel that loss in ways he never expected. He'll start checking his phone more often, scrolling through old conversations, waiting for a notification that never comes. He'll replay the last words you said to him, wondering if he missed something, if there was a sign he overlooked. He'll start second-guessing himself, questioning whether he made the right decision, whether he misjudged your value. And that's when the tables turn. That's when the silence starts to break him. Because now he's the one craving attention. Now he's the one feeling uncertain, feeling uneasy. He's the one experiencing the emotional turmoil he assumed you'd be drowning in. And the more you hold your ground, the more you refuse to engage, the stronger your presence becomes in his mind. See, people don't realize how loud silence can be until they're the ones forced to sit with it. And that's what's happening to him right now. The void you left is speaking louder than any words ever could. The lack of your energy, your warmth, your presence, it's making him feel a level of emptiness he never prepared for. And the most powerful part? He knows that reaching out to you is the only way to make it stop, but his pride is standing in the way. So now he's stuck between his ego and his emotions, stuck between wanting to hear from you and not wanting to admit that he needs to. And that internal battle, that's where your power lies, because while he's busy fighting himself, you've already moved forward. He thought he had control. He thought he had the upper hand, that you'd be the one struggling while he moved on effortlessly. But here's the truth. He underestimated the weight of your silence. He assumed that if he pulled away, you'd chase. He assumed that if he ignored you, you'd fight for his attention. But instead, you did the one thing he never saw coming. You went quiet. And that silence is driving him crazy. It's making him restless. Because silence isn't just the absence of words, it's a message. A loud, undeniable message that says, I don't need you. And nothing makes a man more uncomfortable than realizing that the person he expected to be waiting for him is no longer there. At first, he brushed it off. He convinced himself that you were just playing games, that you'd come running back eventually. He told himself that you were probably just waiting for the right moment to reach out. But as time passed, as the days turned into weeks and your name never appeared on his phone, the confidence he once had started to crack. He started to wonder. He started to check. Maybe he looked at your social media, maybe asked mutual friends about you, maybe he replayed the last conversations you had in his mind, searching for signs of where things went wrong. And that's when it hit him. You weren't coming back. You weren't waiting. You weren't seeking closure. You weren't giving him the reaction he expected. And that realization, that's what's breaking him. Because now he has to sit with the truth. He has to sit with the fact that he miscalculated, that he gambled with your emotions and he lost, that he thought you'd be the one struggling, but now he's the one feeling the void. He's the one wondering why it doesn't feel as satisfying as he thought it would. He's the one realizing that silence is louder than words, that it carries more weight than an argument, more impact than begging, more power than any attempt to make him change. See, when you stop reacting, when you stop engaging, when you stop giving someone access to your energy, they have no choice but to feel the emptiness. And that's what's happening to him right now. Your silence is becoming the loudest thing in his world. And no matter how hard he tries to ignore it, he can't. Because deep down, he knows that he's not just losing you, he's losing the version of you that once cared. And that's a loss he never prepared for. He never thought your absence would feel this heavy. He assumed you would always be there, waiting, hoping, watching for a sign that he still cared. But the moment you chose silence over reaction, distance over desperation, he felt something shift, something he never expected. See, when a man is used to your presence, when he's grown accustomed to the sound of your voice, the weight of your emotions, the certainty that you'll always respond, your silence shakes him. At first, he tried to ignore it. He told himself it didn't matter, that you were just playing a game. But the longer the silence stretched, the more it started to gnaw at him. Because silence isn't just an absence, it's a statement. And the statement you're making, it's powerful. It's telling him that he's no longer the center of your world, that you've reclaimed your energy, that his presence in your life is no longer a necessity, but an option. And that realization, that's what's getting to him. Men are wired to expect a reaction. They thrive on knowing they still have an impact, that their words, their actions, their choices still stir something in you. When you argue, when you plead, when you keep checking in, it feeds their ego. It reassures them that they still hold a certain level of control. But when you go silent, when you detach, when you pull away without explanation, without a single word, that's when the panic sets in. Because now he's left with only his thoughts, and thoughts are dangerous when there's no distraction. He starts wondering if he miscalculated, if he pushed you too far, if maybe, just maybe, you've moved on in a way he didn't anticipate. He starts checking his phone, expecting a message that never comes. He scrolls through old conversations, looking for signs of what changed. He might even start testing the waters, sending a vague message, reacting to a post, anything to see if he still has access to you. But every time he's met with silence, every time he realizes you're no longer playing into the cycle, his grip weakens, his confidence wavers. This is when the tables turn, because now it's no longer you questioning your worth, it's him. It's no longer you trying to hold on, it's him trying to figure out what he lost. The silence that once seemed so insignificant is now the loudest thing in his world, a constant reminder that he's no longer a priority. And that feeling, it lingers, it unsettles, because a man doesn't truly feel the weight of your presence until he's forced to live in the void of your absence. When you choose silence, you are choosing power. You are choosing control over your emotions, over your energy, over the narrative that once kept you trapped in a cycle of reacting, explaining, and justifying. And the moment you stop giving him that access, the moment you stop responding the way he expects, you shift everything. Because here's the truth, people only appreciate what they feel they might lose, and nothing makes someone feel lost more than your absence, your silence, your refusal to play the role they thought you would always play. At first, he won't admit it. He'll act as if your silence doesn't faze him, as if he's unfazed, unaffected, moving forward without a second thought. But that's just the mask, the defense mechanism. Deep down, it's eating at him. Because silence isn't just about not speaking, it's about what it represents. It tells him you're no longer seeking his approval, no longer waiting for his validation, no longer caught up in his world. And that's what unsettles him. A man who thought he had your attention will start to wonder why it's gone. A man who believed you would always be there, answering, reacting, showing up, he will feel the shift when you don't. And this isn't about playing games. This isn't about manipulating someone into chasing you. This is about reclaiming your power. This is about recognizing that your attention is valuable, that your energy is a privilege, and that not everyone deserves unlimited access to it. The more you withhold your reaction, the more he feels it. The more you detach, the more his mind races, trying to figure out what changed. See, men expect women to explain. They expect closure, confrontation, a moment where they still get to hold on to the last word. But when you walk away in silence, when you let your absence do the talking, you take away his ability to control the outcome. And that's what shakes him. That's what makes him rethink everything. Because now he's left alone with his thoughts. Now he's the one wondering what you're thinking, what you're feeling, what you're doing without him. Now he's the one scrolling through messages, trying to piece together where things shifted. And the more he realizes you're not coming back to explain, the more he feels it. The more he starts to question his decisions, the more he starts to feel that void. And that's when the regret sets in. That's when he starts remembering the way you cared, the way you showed up, the way you gave him a version of yourself that no one else will. That's when he realizes that silence isn't just about absence, it's about strength. And nothing is more attractive, more powerful, more unforgettable than a woman who knows her worth enough to walk away without a single word. When you decide to stop responding, to stop giving him the validation he expects, you're not doing it to punish him. You're doing it for yourself. You're doing it because you recognize that your time, your energy, your emotions are precious, and they're not meant to be poured into someone who doesn't appreciate them or value them the way they should be. In the silence, you regain your focus, your clarity, and your peace. And that is far more powerful than any words you could say or any argument you could win. See, the game he thought he was playing with you starts to unravel. He thought you would always be available, always be ready to explain, to beg for his attention, to beg for his time. But your silence disrupts that. It breaks the illusion. It forces him to face the consequences of his actions, to realize that you're not chasing after him anymore, that you're not going to fall back into the cycle of emotional dependency. And that's a realization that cuts deep. It forces him to confront his own feelings and choices, and he doesn't want to do that. You see, we have to understand that people often operate in a world of expectations. They expect certain behaviors, certain responses because they have gotten so used to it. And when that pattern breaks, when you suddenly stop showing up in the way they thought you would, it creates an internal conflict. And that internal conflict is something he'll have to deal with. He'll wonder what changed, why you're not seeking him out anymore, why you're not giving him the same level of access to your life. And this isn't about creating a power struggle. This is about understanding your own worth. This is about recognizing that you don't need to beg for attention. You don't need to prove your value to anyone, especially someone who has taken you for granted. Your silence is your way of reclaiming your personal power and regaining control over your life. It is a statement that you will no longer let someone dictate how you should feel, how you should behave, or how much of yourself you should give. The longer you maintain this silence, the more he will feel it, because it forces him to ask the hard questions, questions he didn't think he would ever need to ask. It forces him to reflect on his own actions and wonder if he made the right choice, if he took you for granted, if he was wrong to push you away. And with each passing day of your silence, that doubt will grow, that sense of loss will build, and soon he'll start to realize the gravity of what he's lost. He'll wonder why you're no longer reaching out, no longer pleading for his attention, no longer holding on to something that's been broken. In the silence, you hold the space for your own healing, for your own growth. You're no longer the one trying to fix everything, to smooth over the rough patches. Instead, you're standing in your own power, taking control of your own journey. And this shift in your behavior, this withdrawal of emotional energy, is exactly what makes him start to feel it. It's exactly what will push him to reflect on his actions and realize that maybe, just maybe, he's the one who's been missing out. And that in itself is more powerful than any words you could ever say, because you're showing him your value, your strength, your resilience. You're teaching him that you are not someone to be ignored, dismissed, or taken for granted. And in the silence, he will learn exactly what it means to lose someone who truly matters.